Welcome back, everybody, to Takacs McGinnis Elder Care Law Hour. I'm Tim Takacs, and we're talking today about the business of dying. There's an important, uncomfortable topic that we need to address, and that's what happens with final arrangements.
Yeah. So I'm Barbara McGinnis. When someone dies, there's lots to do. And after the funeral, what about taking care of all the stuff, all the business of that person? How do we wrap it up? And we've got Mollie Lacher.
Lacher.
Okay.
Go by Albury.
She's a founder of Sunny Care Services, and she's going to tell us about what she does and how she helps families deal with that business.
Absolutely. So Sunny Care Services is just that, Barbara. So we take on all of the administrative tasks that come with a loved one passing away. So obviously there's a lot that falls into your wheelhouse of estate attorneys and the things that you all do, financial advisors and funeral directors. What I do is I try and grab all of the other things. Calling utilities, calling credit cards, student loans, social media, all of the odds and ends with property, you know, that typically can fall on a family, and that can be a big burden. And so what I try and do is relieve that burden for families just by taking that on.
So who's usually supposed to do that?
Yeah, so
I mean, there's a legal role, and it sounds
Sure.
like maybe you step in to help somebody
yeah, absolutely.
that maybe has that legal role.
Yep. So it depends a lot on the situation. You know,
Right.
each family is so unique in their circumstance. So I do typically work with the executor, is probably what you're referring to, or a surviving spouse, a surviving child that may be left behind. So it depends on who really is that family member that comes forward. I think in our family dynamics as well as mine, there's always that one family member that kind of is the leader that's taking the reins on things. And so I typically work with that individual and coordinate with them. And I think where I bring a lot of value to is when that individual tends to be out of town, but there's still a lot to deal with that's in town. That seems to be really helpful, just to have boots on the ground here in Nashville to help people with that.
What's the hardest thing, like bank accounts and things like that? I would think that's actually difficult for anybody other than the executor to do, unless they were a joint owner.
Sure, and I say that each situation is so unique, and especially if you're in the probate process, that is a really complicated matter that I would obviously advise a family to work with an attorney on if they were going through something complicated like that. So bank accounts are truly, what you said, the trickiest ones that I deal with.
Yeah.
And so it does typically need to be an executor, or you have to have some kind of legal proof, as you know, that you are the next of kin or whoever that should rightfully close that bank account. But then with utilities and other things like that, typically a death certificate, a copy of the death certificate will do in that regard, and then showing your relationship to the individual that passed away. Those documents typically get you enough to close out those accounts.
So the things like bank accounts, and that sounds obvious to me, and probably obvious to our viewers. So what's maybe not so obvious? What are what are things that people maybe are going to potentially overlook?
Yeah, absolutely. I think social media accounts is a new thing that I'm really dealing with a lot of individuals. And
so how do you do that if you've got, like, if you don't have passwords? How do you get into those accounts?
Actually, each social media outlet has developed a process that you can follow of taking control or locking down that account. So Facebook has their own process that I've helped families with. It's called memorializing an account. So what that does is it locks down the profile in the account so that no one can get in and access it, but it keeps it active so that you can still have access to the pictures, which mean a lot to families. They want to still see pictures of their loved one there, and keeps the wall active so that you can also contribute to the wall. But each social media outlet has its own. Twitter I've done for families as well, and that requires just a death certificate that closes out the account. Actually, Instagram, I think, will close out an account, LinkedIn, things like that. So each one has been similar but different in the information they require, but I see that is typically forgotten by families.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important one, just because I think you need to secure all accounts, online presence for an individual that's passed away for identity theft purposes. But then I think also Facebook, for instance, will do your birthday reminders. And I think that that's something that you don't think about until you see someone that's passed away and there's a reminder for their birthday. I think it's just a painful reminder that you can bypass if you just take care of this on the front end.
You know, I think there's going to be lots of need for this type of service going forward, because there are things that the executor has to do, but then that frees them, your services would free them up for all those other little things that they can pass on to some. I mean, it's little things, but it's a lot of little things that build up and becomes overwhelming sometimes for executors. So I know that they're appreciative, and I was going to bring out the whole point about identity theft. So some of the periphery things like the social media, you have checking credit, notifying the credit reporting agencies and those kind of things.
Absolutely. It is important because I think it is sad. There is a huge market out there for identity theft with recently deceased individuals.
Right.
I'm just learning about all of this, just starting this business, but it is really unfortunate that there are people out there that are targeting these populations because the family is already so raw and vulnerable already. But you read a lot of stories about people who watch obituaries and then they look and target those individuals' accounts, and if a family doesn't act fast enough, then they can be vulnerable for someone to come forward and steal that individual's identity.
That kind of brings up this question. Okay, so you're talking about identity theft and the potential for scams. So it sounds like to me, maybe you have an opportunity to help people while they're living.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, you know, our topic today is about the business of dying, and sometimes dying people want to make sure that they get this stuff taken care of. And so, how can you help them, or maybe the persons who are like maybe us, who are not so dying,
right? Yes.
So to speak.
Absolutely, and I have done some pre-planning for families before, and so I think it is always helpful to have your password stored very securely somewhere. So there are systems out there that will store every password that you have for an account. So then you just have a master password that allows you kind of keys to the kingdom for everything. That will be helpful for any family because I think password guessing is a really tricky game that a lot of family members have to get involved in, and it's tough. And then I think there's also certain online presence outlets. So for instance, Google, I use Gmail. I think a lot of people do use that as well. Google Photos, things of that nature. They actually have an individual that you can assign so that individual can access your accounts in the event that you become, in Google's words, I think they call it an inactive user executive. So then if there's a certain amount of time that passes by that you haven't gone into your Gmail or gone into your Google Photos, that individual would be contacted. So I've listed my husband as my inactive. Facebook has the same thing for a legacy user as well. So there are parameters in place that you can kind of tap into to set yourself up for success in the event that you pass unexpectedly.
I think that's good information to know as we're helping people plan. Even more mundane things, canceling subscriptions to magazines or automatic refills on medications and things like that. What kind of information do they need? Same thing?
Yeah, so I think that it would be great if you could list all of this out for a family and you could have everything organized. I mean, best case scenario, everything is listed out in terms of medication, subscriptions, whatnot. A lot of times I don't encounter that with families.
Right.
So there are services out there that will help you hone in on this. So a service that I've actually personally used and I recommend to families is Trim. So what Trim does is it's an online service that links into a bank account and pulls out all of the reoccurring monthly expenditures on that account. So if you're not sure, if your mother passed away and you were not sure what monthly subscriptions were coming or were hitting her bank account, it would easily pull that out for you so that you could see it all in one place.
So I could go to Trim on my own account.
Absolutely.
Okay, to see what I've done.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
And it sounds like to me is you could tell people now, it says go into the, or you do it help them through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they can kind of prepare for this.
Exactly, and I think
let's not give money to Trim, but we'll give money to you, right? Because I'm assuming we haven't talked about how much this costs, and I'm sure you have to make a living out of this. And
yes,
so
absolutely.
I'm not sure we have that much time to talk about that, but I think we need. Can we put your contact information out?
Absolutely, please share it around.
So,
okay, so your Sunny Care Services, sunnycareservices.com, right?
And your contact phone number is 615-358-8520.
That's right.
That didn't make it up there, but
right, Mollie Lacher.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thanks for being with us. All right, so next up, when we come back, we're going to be discussing or returning to the topic of hospice and palliative care. So rejoining us for our final segment will be Dr. Nicolene De Laurentiis. So please stay with us.